Hi, I'm Kendra, and I have two sisters, Candy and Kelly, who live my life and hate me. Our parents turn a blind eye on that, so I have to deal with my sisters myself. We got on well and played together as kids, and everything was fine until I got a beautiful doll for my 5th birthday. My sisters asked to play with it, but wait, it's my present, I must play first. No such luck. My sisters got mad, stole the doll from me, broke it and tossed it back to me. I'd cried for several hours and then fell asleep and saw a terrifying dream. I saw myself in a room without windows, and above me there was a blinking light bulb. I woke up in cold sweat and suddenly understood that my sisters were my enemies from now on. They didn't apologize or make peace. On the contrary, they tortured me. Starting school made it all even worse. Thanks goodness we're not in the same class. But that doesn't stop my sisters from messing with me. They steal all the projects I prepare for school. Thus I became the weakest student of my class, despite being the smartest one. Have you ever been underestimated? Who it was? My parents scolded me for my poor grades, but when I tried to tell them the truth, they would never listen, making me go clean in my room instead. But every time I had just finished cleaning, Candy and Kelly appeared immediately and everything went down the drain. That's because they knew how much I hate mess, and they always get away with it. I felt lonely more and more often, while my sisters, on the contrary, were popular. Folks at school loved them, and the teachers used to praise them and say they'd enter the most prestigious university. Yeah, sure. They're not even able to write a test themselves. They copy my work while I'm asleep. Once, we had a new guy at class. He was called Ike. He joined me at my desk. Wow, that's brave, but maybe you don't know I'm kinda loser here. Ike said he didn't care, and I liked it so much. During a break, Ike invited me to the canteen, and it was the first time in several years I wasn't eating alone. That was so cool. My sisters didn't like him right away. You bet. At least someone treats me well. Ike and I became friends. He gave me a lift home every day, and once we drove by. Hey, where are you going? Stop! Suddenly a spectacular lake view opened up for us. I didn't even know there was such beauty nearby. We sat by the very shore and threw pebbles into the water. For the first time, I felt like having a soulmate. Ike seemed to be the closest person to me. And then I got the courage to tell him about my sisters and even about that doll incident. Yeah, Ike, Candy and Kelly really hate me. Good thing they are in another class, otherwise they'd nag you for being my friend. Ike embraced me and stroked my hair. I felt so calm and fine that my eyes closed. Suddenly I was in that room again, with the blinking light bulb above me. How irritating! I jumped up to my feet and ran to the door, but it was locked. I started panicking and shouting. Ike was shaking me by the shoulders, asking me to come to my senses. So that was all a dream? Phew, what a relief. And do you remember your worst nightmare? Write in the comments. I looked at the little bridge, and oh no, I saw my sisters. They were running toward us. Ike, come on, let's get out of here. In a minute we were driving on the road, but I couldn't calm down. Ike, my sisters have hunted us down in our secret place and were running to us. Suddenly he burst out and said he'd deal with them right then. He turned the car and drove to the lake. No, don't do this, I beg you. But when we came back, there was no one. Back home, I'd found a note from my sisters in my room. Thanks to your biology project, we go to a camp for gifted folks. Hooray! To live without my sisters is true happiness. I must enjoy it to the full. Suddenly the doorbell rang. Oh no, could that be deceit and Candy and Kelly never went anywhere? I opened the door and gasped. There was Ike. What are you doing here? He said he wanted to deal with my sisters right away. Hush, don't shout. Come to my room. There, I showed him the note. Time to relax. We were chatting and playing socks and I have never. And then my parents called us to have dinner. It's the best evening in my life. I was so happy to dine with Ike and my parents and not with my sisters. My parents asked lots of questions and told Ike about our family. Mom opened up so much, she even told Ike about that horrible incident from my childhood. Kendra liked Milana's doll so much that took it away from her and broke it in fury. Her parents came to deal with that later. Mom, what nonsense are you saying? It wasn't like that at all. Ike gave me a strange look and said it was about time he left. Ike didn't come to school, but I got a note from him. He wrote a surprise was set for me on the lake and that after classes I should have rushed there. There was a dry flower enclosed. Oh, how sweet! I rushed to our secret spot. What had Ike prepared? Suddenly I saw a tent on the shore, and near it there was a bed cover spread on the ground, with that exact doll from my childhood on it. What the... I took the tent zipper with a trembling hand and pulled it down. Ike and my sisters shout in surprise, jump out. What does that all mean? Ike, you are a traitor! I hate you! Be gone! Ah! I had trouble opening my eyes, but when I did, I saw the blinking light bulb. How terrible it's in here! Suddenly the door opened and nurses entered, saying, "It's time for injection." In a moment I slipped into darkness. Hi, I'm Kendra, and I have two sisters, Candy and Kelly, who live my life and hate me. Our parents turn a blind eye on that, so I have to deal with my sisters myself. Like the video? Subscribe and give us a like. Support our channel. Thank you.
I ran into my sister's room. She had another heart attack and she was sitting and filing her nails. Sis, are you okay? Claire was very happy and quickly said that she had a task for me. Anything you want, I blurted out, but immediately regretted it. Claire asked me to take her place at the meeting with her fiancé. We were twins. Are you crazy? I'm not going anywhere with this spoiled jerk. Claire immediately clutched her heart and began to wail. Tonight, she had an important meeting with Bruce's father, Mr. Wayne. If all went well, Bruce would propose to Claire. And all I needed to do was to take her place while the real Claire was in the hospital. Well, no. Claire pleaded. Her treatment was very expensive and her parents were about to lose the house for debt. After marrying rich Bruce, we would have a fortune. Don't you want to help our family? Claire asked defiantly. Of course, I would do anything for the family. My sister interrupted me and began to give me instructions on how to behave. And she sent me the change. Bruce will be at our house in an hour. You should look stunning. Once again, I followed my sister's lead and got into an adventure. I hated her since I was a kid. She was always bossing me around like a senior, even though she was only born 3 minutes before me. How was I going to play Claire anyway? She was glamorous and confident. And I was clumsy plain Jane. How was I going to be able to match her buoyant boyfriend? But there was not much I could do. Now I had not to screw up and help the family. I ran home as fast as I could, and just as I was putting on my dress, Bruce's fancy car appeared under the windows. I was afraid that he would quickly understand everything, but Bruce didn't seem to notice and just kept hugging me. I can't stand him. He gave me instructions on how to behave the whole drive. Thank you. I've already been told everything. Shut up already. When we arrived at the mansion, Mr. Wayne was standing at the entrance, swearing horribly at the gardener. Yes, I would definitely have a hard time. I exhaled and forced a smile. I should be clear. I was moving towards Mr. Wayne when I suddenly tripped over a statue in the garden. I fell to the ground, and Mr. Wayne immediately rushed to the statue. Damn, its arm fell off. While Bruce helped me up, his father scolded me. How could I be so clumsy and inattentive? Bruce introduced me to his father and tried to lighten the situation by making an awkward joke that I might be clumsy, but I was a living person, not a statue. Bruce's father smiled tightly and, trying to change the subject, asked me how yesterday's event had gone. What was he talking about? Claire hadn't told me anything. I panicked and blurted out the first thing that came to my mind. Dances were rousing. But Mr. Wayne looked at me like I was a fool and said, "At the conservatory?" I thought about how to get out of it, but surprisingly, Bruce helped me. He said that the conductor had been so emotional that he had been dancing at the music stand. I looked at Bruce with gratitude. He had just saved me. Mr. Wayne said I wasn't much of a conversationalist, but Bruce told him I was a great golfer. Mr. Wayne was very happy and offered to play. I had never held a golf club in my life. Terrified, I trudged to the field. Bruce gave me a case of clubs, and I took the first one I could find. I closed my eyes, swung with all my strength, and heard a terrible scream. Heck! I think I broke Mr. Wayne's nose. I immediately rushed to apologize, but he roughly pushed me away and headed for the house. I wanted to cry out of desperation. I'd ruined everything. Now Mr. Wayne would never let Claire marry his son. I was thinking about what to say to Claire when Bruce came up to me. I waited for his anger, but he just laughed. Cool hit, by the way. I couldn't help but smile too. Wow. And Bruce was not such a bore. Then the butler called us to supper. Mr. Wayne was silent at the table, apparently still angry with me. Of course, I understand him. Trying to make conversation, I complimented one of the dishes. In response, Mr. Wayne arrogantly asked if I could cook the same way. I confusedly admitted that I didn't know how to cook. Bruce's father said disgustedly that a woman's place was in the kitchen and told me to wash at least the dishes. He pointed to the plates. Well, this is too much. In my anger, I shouted at Wayne that he was a tyrant and a misogynist. Wayne turned purple with anger and told me to get out. Oh my god, what have I done? What's going to happen to Claire now? I ran out of the mansion in tears. Bruce caught up with me at the gate. He said dryly that he had to go. I tried to apologize, but Bruce cut me off. We hit the highway, and then Bruce took a sharp turn into the woods. It was already dark and I was filled with fear. Was he going to kill me there? I tried to ask Bruce where we were going, but he didn't say anything. Suddenly, we stopped. My heart was pounding. Cautiously, I opened the door and got out of the car. And suddenly a fantastic view of the city opened in front of me. How beautiful. Then Bruce said there was no better place to... He paused. To what? Bruce got down on one knee and took the ring out of his pocket. He said I was the bravest girl he'd ever met. His father had no authority for a long time. He was always not happy with everything. So even if his father didn't approve of our wedding, Bruce still wanted to marry me. I was a wonderful, honest girl. What? I had never been told such words. So I did it. My sister Claire would soon recover. And my parents would still have their home. Yes, of course, I agree. And then Bruce kissed me. What? I didn't expect this and at first even tried to dodge. But then I relaxed and gave myself to feelings. I wanted the kiss to last forever. We watched the sunset for a while longer and then returned to the city. I didn't want to go home at all, so we went for a walk along the old streets. Bruce told me interesting things about houses. He knew a lot about architecture. I liked Bruce more and more. I had no idea that he could be so interesting. Bruce drove me home in the early morning. We kissed again, and elated, I ran into the house. And bumped into Claire. She was getting better, and she had already been discharged. Damn. I'd forgotten about my sister. Well, so now, am I the bride? She asked sharply. I remembered my kiss with Bruce and blushed. Unable to answer, then Claire noticed the ring. Diamonds! She exclaimed happily and unceremoniously pulled a ring off my finger. Claire said with a grin that she was pleased with me. For once, I didn't screw up, but then she would do it on her own. The next week, Claire was busy preparing for the wedding. She was in such a hurry to get married that the wedding celebration was decided to be held in a month. I kept thinking about Bruce. On the one hand, I felt guilty for deceiving him. On the other hand, I couldn't believe I'd been so happy with him that night. Just when I thought I was beginning to forget, Claire brought him to meet our parents. I was terrified. I had to stay in my room all evening. Even though Bruce knew about a twin sister, Claire told me to steer clear. But even in my room, I could hear Claire bossing Bruce. I put on my headphones so I wouldn't have to hear it all. And then the door opened and Bruce came in. He paused in the doorway. Confused. God, did he recognize me? But Bruce explained that he was looking for a bathroom. He was about to leave when he suddenly paused. For a second, I thought Bruce recognized me and he was going to give me a big hug. Of course, dream on. But instead, Bruce said that he was happy to meet me and hoped to see me at the wedding. I was in a lot of pain, but I agreed, fighting back tears. It was time to understand that Bruce did not love me, but my sister. On the eve of the ceremony, Claire persuaded me to go to the bachelorette party, but because of cocktails, she was free and easy. She called Bruce a rich kid and promised her friends a cool car at his expense. I felt sick and angry. Bruce didn't deserve to be treated like this. He was a great guy, not a bag of money. I took out my phone. He had to know the truth. But Claire snatched the phone out of my hands, shouting that I probably really wanted our parents to lose our house. And then she clutched at her heart. Stop faking it, Claire. I'm not buying it. I was already dialing the number, but Claire suddenly turned pale and fell to the floor. Oh my god, she was really feeling bad. I called an ambulance and we rushed to the hospital. The doctors were examining Claire and I kept walking up down the hall, and then the doctor came out. Finally, he was worried. He said that because of the frequent attacks, Claire's heart was very worn out and she needed an expensive operation or the next time the heart valve might fall. Oh my god. I ran to the ward. With the last of her strength, Claire called me over, calling me her favorite sister for the first time. She begged me to replace her at the wedding. I was so torn between my pain for my sister and my feelings for Bruce. Emotions overwhelmed me, so without answering, I ran out of the room. And here I was, standing at the altar in a gorgeous wedding dress. Bruce was there, so beautiful, so desirable, and now so inaccessible. A few more minutes, and he would be Claire's husband. I'd rather give her my heart if I could. Can I save my sister only at the cost of a lie? The priest started talking about true love, and I realized I couldn't fool Bruce like that. Stop! I shouted. The priest froze in disbelief, and the guests began to exchange glances. I threw up my veil and told Bruce everything, that Claire was in the hospital and I was Jane, her sister. And then at the meeting with his father, it wasn't Claire either, but me. I paused, unable to say a single word. I thought that Bruce would be furious, but suddenly he kissed me. I didn't understand what was going on. Bruce. Then he leaned over and whispered to me that he had noticed the change in Claire since the day I met his father. But he liked his Claire. Brave and strong, much more. And then he said out loud that it was with me that he wanted to be. I felt like I stopped breathing. Bruce nodded to the priest, who continued the ceremony, asking if I would take Bruce as my husband. I froze for a second, then said no. The whole room gasped, and Bruce was stunned. I told him honestly about Claire's operation and her parents' debts. I didn't want Bruce to think I was using him for money. I could handle it all by myself and save the family. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I tried to leave, but Bruce grabbed my arm. He said that he would definitely help me, and debts were not a reason to cancel the wedding. After all, he really loved me. I couldn't believe it. Absolutely happy, I kissed Bruce. Looking at us, the priest smiled. I think we can continue the ceremony. And I suddenly realized, the main thing is to follow your heart. It will always tell you the right way. We exchanged rings and started kissing. Did you like the video? Then subscribe and like it. Support the channel. Thank you.